After Freddie Mercury died, Brian May drove to Hammersmith Bridge more than once and sat there. He has said this directly in an interview with The Guardian without ambiguity or qualification. He said he was very close to driving off the bridge. Several times. He used the word very. He named the bridge. He did not soften it into something more manageable. And then he said something that he has never fully completed, that something stopped him. He has implied it was the thought of his children, or the thought that things might change, or the specific quality of not quite reaching the final decision. But he has never said it clearly. He has never named what stopped him in the way he named the bridge. This story is about what happened to Brian May in the 12 months between November 1991 and the end of 1992, a period in which he lost three things simultaneously, any one of which would have been enough to break a person, and in which the combination of all three produced a specific kind of darkness that does not resolve quickly and cannot be explained away. He came back from it. He came back slowly and with help, and with the specific effort of a person who has decided that coming back is what they are going to do. But the bridge was real. He named it. And the naming of it is the beginning of understanding what that period was. In 1991, Brian May lost three things in the space of roughly 12 months, and the timing was not staggered in a way that would have allowed him to absorb one before facing the next. Freddie Mercury died on the 24th of November from AIDS-related bronchial pneumonia at 45 years old. Brian May had known Freddie Mercury for more than 20 years and had played in the same band for virtually all of his adult life. In the same period, his father Harold died, the same Harold who had built the Red Special with him in the Feltham workshop, who had told his son he was throwing his life away and then watched him prove otherwise. And in the same period, his first marriage was ending. He had fallen in love with Anita Dobson. The falling apart of it, at the same moment as everything else, compounded what was already unmanageable. Brian May has spoken about depression with a quality of precision that is unusual among people who discuss their mental health publicly. He has not described it in the general terms that tend to accompany celebrity mental health disclosures. He has described it in the specific terms of what it actually feels like from the inside. He said on a podcast called How Do You Cope with Ellis James and John Robbins that depression is not being able to see a future that you can stand. Not a future that is hopeful or comfortable or pleasant, simply a future that can be born. He described it as a paralyzing thing. He said that when he was in it, he could not write, could not get up, could not see any use in any of the things that had previously given his life structure and meaning. He said he sat in his studio feeling so incredibly bleak, wondering if he had anything to say. All I could feel was pain. This is not the language of someone describing a difficult period with the distance of retrospect. It is the language of someone who was in that specific place and is choosing now to describe exactly what it was like, rather than managing the description towards something more acceptable. Brian May, in his early 40s, after a career of extraordinary success and public achievement in 30 years of music making, could not see a future that he could stand. Depression is not being able to see a future that you can stand. That is the definition Brian May gave. Not a future that is good or happy or successful, a future that you can bear. And for 2 years after Freddie Mercury died, Brian May could not see one. He drove to Hammersmith Bridge more than once. He named the bridge. He named the word very. And he said something stopped him and has never said clearly what it was. This is not a small disclosure from a famous person. This is someone describing the most difficult thing they have been through and choosing to describe it honestly, because the honesty might matter to someone who needs to hear it. The specific quality of losing Freddie Mercury for Brian May was not simply the loss of a friend or a bandmate, though it was both of those things. It was the loss of the creative relationship that had defined his life since he was 22 years old. When Freddie Mercury died, Brian May did not lose only a person. He lost the arguments, the productive, creative disagreements that had refined everything they made. He lost the person who could tell him he was wrong in the way that made him able to hear it. He lost 20 years of working language, the shorthand, the shared reference points that develop only across decades of making things together. And he lost it while he was also losing his father and his marriage. The grief had no room to expand into because every direction was already full of loss. Brian May has described the creative paralysis of the Depression years consistently and honestly. He could not write, could not record, could not see the point of making music in a world where Freddie Mercury was not there to hear it and respond to it. The solo album he had been working on, Back to the Light, eventually released in 1992, existed partly as a document of the Depression itself. He described sitting in his studio staring at the equipment and not being able to produce anything. The billiard table had been slid to the side to make room for the recording setup. He sat in that room. He felt the blankness. He could not see the future. He drove to Hammersmith Bridge. He sat there. He did not drive off it, and eventually he went home. Beyond the personal, Brian May described a specific existential quality to this grief. He said he and Roger Taylor went through a period of almost denying the existence of Queen, 2 years of grieving and behaving irrationally. He could not bear the thought of being kept in that place. Not a physical place. The position of being the surviving member of something that had defined his entire adult identity. Who is Brian May if there is no Queen that contains Freddie Mercury? He had no answer to this question in 1991 and 1992. When the answer came, it came slowly. For 2 years, it did not come at all. Who is Brian May if there is no Queen? That was the question that the bridge raised. Not the professional question, not who is Brian May without a band to play in. The deeper question, who am I if the thing that has been the container of my life for 20 years no longer exists? He could not answer it for 2 years. He drove to the bridge and sat and did not drive off it and went home, and came back and did not drive off it and went home again. And eventually the question found an answer. But it found it slowly, and the bridge was real all the way through. Brian May found therapy. He has spoken about it directly, not with the language of someone wanting credit for seeking help, but someone reporting what worked. He said he sat in groups and identified himself. I'm Brian. I'm a depressive. He has described it as the process of learning to see the dark thought as a thought rather than as a fact. The work of separating the experience of depression from the assumption that what depression says about the future is true. Depression said there was no future worth having. Therapy helped him understand that depression was wrong, not immediately, over time, with the specific, unglamorous, daily effort of a person who has decided to try to get better. Back to the Light, Brian May's first solo album, eventually released in September 1992, is in part a document of the period of depression and in part a document of the attempt to find the way back from it. The album took its name from the specific quality of what coming back from depression feels like. Not a sudden return to the light, but a gradual movement toward it. The specific, slow quality of a recovery that does not announce itself but simply becomes, over time, less dark. The title track describes this directly. Brian May has said the album was motivated partly by grief and partly by the desire to prove something to himself and to the people who thought he was finished, that he still had something to say, that the voice had not gone, that the music was still there waiting for him to find his way back to it. He found his way back to it. The album was his first solo record to reach the top 10 in the UK. It was made by a person who had sat on Hammersmith Bridge more than once and gone home, and eventually decided that going home was what he was going to keep doing. At some point in the years after Freddie Mercury's death, Brian May has placed it in the general period of recovery from the depression. Without pinpointing an exact date, something changed in the way he experienced Freddie Mercury's absence. He has described this shift with a quality that is careful not to make it sound more mystical than it was or more resolved than it was. He said, "We got to the point where it now seems like Freddie is with us. It doesn't seem like he left anymore, because he's in everything we do. I can never have a single day without thinking about Freddie." This is not the statement of someone who has made peace with a loss in the sense of having moved beyond it. It is the statement of someone who has found a way to carry the loss that does not destroy the carrier. Freddie Mercury did not leave because he is in everything Brian May does in the music, in the way the guitar sounds, in the specific shape of every creative decision that the years with Freddie taught him to make. The absence is present, but it is present in a way that can be stood. He can never have a single day without thinking about Freddie. He said this. He has said it more than once. What changed was not the frequency of the thinking. Freddie is there every day, but the quality of it. The grief that drove him to Hammersmith Bridge was not resolved. It was transformed. The person who could not see a future that he could stand found a future that contained Freddie, not as someone present in the ordinary sense, but as someone in everything he does. And a future that contains Freddie in that way is a future that can be stood. Brian May stands on stages today, Queen plus Adam Lambert concerts, arenas and stadiums, with the footage of Freddie Mercury playing on the screen behind him. He plays the Red Special. He plays the songs he and Freddie wrote together, alongside the recording of the voice that wrote them with him. He has said it never becomes routine. The specific quality of standing on a stage with the recording of a person he drove to a bridge over, night after night, without it becoming manageable, that is the quality of a love that does not diminish. Behind him, the screen shows Freddie Mercury singing. Brian May cannot have a single day without thinking about him. What the stage contains every night is both the bridge and the reason not to drive off it. Brian May named Hammersmith Bridge. He named it specifically without softening in The Guardian. He could have said it was a difficult time. He could have used the vocabulary of celebrity mental health disclosure that manages the weight while appearing to address it. He did not. He said he was very close to driving off a bridge. Several times. Very close. It was Hammersmith Bridge. He named it because honesty about these things is the only form that is actually useful to someone else who is in a similar place. One of the most famous guitarists in history, a PhD in astrophysics. He sat on that bridge more than once and did not know why he should go home. The fame did not make him immune. This is the thing he named the bridge to say. He named the bridge. He named the word very. He did not say what stopped him, not fully, not completely, not in a way that closes the question. And the not saying is part of the honesty of it, because the thing that stops someone at a moment like that is not always articulable. It is sometimes simply the not yet of it, the fact of going home, the driving away, the morning that comes after the bridge. Brian May went home. He kept going home, and eventually the mornings accumulated into a future he could stand. Brian May drove to Hammersmith Bridge after Freddie Mercury died and sat there and came back. He did this more than once. He came back because the thing that stops someone at a moment like that stopped him, and he has not named it completely, and he does not need to. He went home. He went to therapy. He made Back to the Light. He made Made in Heaven from the recordings Freddie Mercury left for the band to finish. He stood on stages with the Red Special and the footage of Freddie on the screen behind him. He found a way to carry the grief that did not require the grief to go away, only to be carried differently. Depression told him there was no future worth having. Depression was wrong. The future contained the Red Special, and the music, and the stages with Freddie on the screen behind him, and the single day, every day, of not being able to stop thinking about him. Brian May named the bridge. He also named the way back. He said, "Queen is in me, and I am in Queen, and that can't change." The bridge was real. So was the way back. Both of them matter.